as I read pages 26 through 27, I'm going to keep in mind the subtitles and the subheadings of each section. And then I'm going to make sure as I read that I annotate things that are related to those subheadings. So let's read paragraph 12. Other groups fought for the vote. The right of every adult American to vote was protected by the 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendments. Yet the voting rights of Native Americans, Mexican Americans, and Asian Americans still weren't guaranteed. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965 that these citizens were able to vote. Native Americans. In 1924, all Native Americans became citizens. They now had the right to vote, but because these states still controlled voting, most Native Americans couldn't vote. Slowly, over the years, states began to allow Native Americans to vote. New Mexico was the last state to do so. That was in 1962, nearly 40 years after Native Americans became citizens. So based on the two bolded words and titles, I can tell that it's going to be about other groups who fought for the vote. And in this section here, it's probably going to be mainly about the Native Americans and their right to vote. So I can tell from here that it was the Native Americans, Mexican Americans, and Asian Americans who were still fighting for the right to vote. If I jump to paragraph 13, I'm going to focus on Native Americans. And we're going to focus on what they did or how they did it to get the right to vote. So it says in 1924, all Native Americans became citizens. So I need to annotate that because that probably is important about getting the right to vote. And if you look at the next sentence, it says they now had the right to vote. And then if I look down here, it says slowly over the years, states began to allow Native Americans to vote. New Mexico was the last to do so. That was in 1962, nearly 40 years after the Native Americans became citizens. So I'm going to annotate that. New Mexico was the last state. And that was in 1962. 40 years after Native Americans became citizens. So, just notice all the patterns. We're looking at the subheadings and subtitles and the bolded words. Then we're looking for repetitive words. Notice there's Native Americans in paragraph 12, Native Americans in 13, and Native Americans in paragraph 14. So those might have been very important details that I needed to pay attention to. Now what you're going to do is you're going to page 28 and 29, and you're going to read paragraphs 15 through 19. Pay attention to the bolded subtitles of each section because those help you remember what to focus on for your key ideas.